What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Hope all's good wherever you are. In this video, we have Charlie Kirk debating a student on free speech and exposing very, very liberal teachers at these woke universities. We're going to get right to it. But first, if you guys don't mind, smash that thumbs up button. Leave a comment down below. Be respectful. Subscribe. All that good stuff. Let's get it.
Personally, I'm someone that really values free speech, right, and like an uninhibited engagement among people that disagree. And it's really unsettling to me that you have this website, professorwatchlist.org, right?
Yep.
That basically tells conservative students that, hey, these professors are very liberal, and you should avoid them.
It doesn't say avoid them.
The official statement I read said it
Just to expose.
Okay, fine, expose. But even in that, I feel like that colors thought, so that it really teaches conservative people
Do
that
you think when a professor says something like the hurricane victims of Houston deserve to die because they supported Trump, do you think that professor should be called out for that?
I think, yes, it's important to call them out, but I don't think
So that's what our project does.
Oh, I understand what you're intending to do, right? But how it's received is it's something where it's really, you're coloring their speech to where it's not free speech.
No, but
you're
we're not
telling them
saying
what to do
it's
beforehand.
not Professor Blacklist or Professor Hitlist.
This young man's heart's in the right place. He said he's pro-free speech, but then he contradicted himself with his comment because he said, well, you shouldn't be exposing these teachers. And really, a lot of these teachers in universities, I think universities across the board should be as apolitical as possible. You should encourage debate. You should encourage critical thinking. And if you have a view as a teacher, a political view, you should probably keep that out of the university. But this is not where we're at right now in society. So if you're going to university, which is expensive, whether you're a student paying for it yourself or your parents are paying for it, you're going to want to know who's teaching your kids. You're going to want to know who's teaching you, because if you're a conservative kid or a conservative parent, you're going to want to know who's teaching these classes to make sure that your kids are not being taught by these crazy woke liberals. So if they have books that they've published, which a lot of these teachers have, you're going to want to go and read those. You're going to want to follow their social media if they have that. Check out their lectures. This is kind of the same. So I don't see an issue. It's not really inciting violence or anything of the sort. You just say, hey, these teachers right here are very liberal. If you're not very liberal, you might not want to take these classes. I don't see an issue with it. I think it's fine.
But
We're not saying they should shut up or be fired.
But for example, so this one professor, I think his name was Alberto Ponce.
Okay.
I was reading the list and it said that he was, basically he was saying these things, and he was saying that, oh, the Constitution is a white man's Constitution.
Yeah, it's a quite radical sentiment.
Sure, it's a radical sentiment, but it's protected by the First Amendment.
No doubt.
It's something that
you and I will agree on.
right?
Yeah, that he has a right to say it.
Right, and
But also, my opinion would be we as conservatives need to signal where that radical ideology is present. And I don't understand, these professors, we're not misquoting them.
yeah. No, I understand
all this
that.
stuff is, we're just making
But
them
would
more
you agree
famous.
that it's taken out of context, though?
But that's not my fault if someone takes something out of context.
But
so if
you're
I says your
providing the
sweatshirt is
state
red,
of
it's not anyone's fault except the interpreters.
Sure, but you're providing this platform for people to spread this misinformation.
Not necessarily.
You don't think it's a platform where people can spread misinformation?
You can say the same thing about the internet or Twitter or Facebook. It's not incumbent on the person who creates the platform to be responsible for how people interpret it.
Of course, but a lot of times when there are people kind of discussing this thing and they hold a similar view, then it creates something that's akin to blacklist. At least that's how I feel.
The Turning Point USA website that they are talking about, obviously, run by Charlie, a very conservative website. So this kid knows that, but the data, the information that they get, they take from news outlets, which are most likely very liberal news outlet, like the mainstream media. This kid may or may not know that, but news is not apolitical. They have an agenda these days, the mainstream media. So they take this information, they put it on their website, they take the clippings that these teachers have said, they take their books, whatever they've published, papers, and they put it on there. There's nothing wrong with that. And again, like Charlie said, context matters. How many times have you heard Joe Rogan, for example, or Elon Musk, or Jordan Peterson be taken out of context? Like, people will take a small snippet, a 1-minute snippet of a 4-hour podcast and just put that out to the public and say, see, this person is a racist, or this person is this, or this person is anti-Semitic, from a 30-second clip or a 20-second clip without any context of the rest of the 3 or 4 hour conversation. This happens. What he is doing is no different, like he said, than Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. The platform, you cannot be responsible for the context that people take out of it. If somebody makes up an idea in their head, you have no control over that.
That it's a lot like, or the sentiment reminds me of something like McCarthyism.
So
You're creating this list of people.
Well, okay, so first of all, McCarthy never published his list.
Sure.
So we have a list and we're very public about it.
Yeah.
Secondly, McCarthy called for the termination of people. We've never called for any termination of any professors.
But would you agree that you can incite some degree of violence against those?
No, not necessarily. No, none whatsoever. I mean, the same would be said if a news reporter. By the way, all these professors we have on there were reported on by other news outlets.
Yeah.
So we cited them.
Yeah, I understand.
So why not be mad at Huffington Post for all their articles they write about?
I guess my main question to you is basically with all this, right? Mm-hmm. My feeling is that it inhibits this free engagement because it tells people beforehand that, hey, this is what that person believes.
I would disagree. I think it encourages more speech.
Let me ask. All right, so my question is, how can you guarantee that this is not going to inhibit free speech?
You can never guarantee it.
Teachers that are being exposed on this website, they don't refute it because it's true. They could easily go and debate this stuff or say, hey, well, you took me out of context. And I'm sure if it was true, I mean, Turning Point USA would take them off that website. They'd have a discussion or have an open debate about something. What happens in these universities, you see it all the time. All these conservatives want to go, look at RFK Jr. I know he's not a conservative, but he's been wanting to debate Fauci or somebody on the vax, on the jabby jab, forever. And nobody wants to debate him. A lot of the people on the left, they just won't put themselves in that arena to debate because they know that the ideology doesn't stand on its own. You see it all the time with the gender ideologues. They don't want to debate guys like Matt Walsh or Michael Knowles because they know they're going to get crushed. Putting their name on a website like this doesn't incite violence. It's free speech. He's allowed to do that. And he's taking stuff that they've put out themselves, and they could easily refute it or debate it and, again, open more conversation, which is a good thing. A good thing.
But we're using our right to free speech to encourage more speech.
Are you encouraging more speech or are you silencing that speech?
How are we silencing it?
You're silencing it in the sense that you're telling students that, hey, this person has this preconceived notion, right? So you're giving students this idea that, hey, this professor thinks these things, he believes these things.
So then
when they take that class, they're not going to go into it with this open mind, being these free thinkers. They're going to go into it thinking, hey, this professor has this ideal. I should know that when I
But what's wrong with that?
I think the thing that's wrong with that is
maybe they're more aware.
That's literally antithetical to free speech, would you say?
No, it's not.
I think it's important to engage with someone and rationalize their ideas.
Of course.
Instead of viewing them beforehand.
So when a professor says something like the hurricane comment, which is a real something the United States press said, or from University of Houston, or when the Georgetown law professor a couple weeks ago said, we want Brett Kavanaugh's family to die. They should be made famous when they say stuff like that.
I don't think they should be made famous, though, because then you're inciting violence against them. You're inciting
violence.
You're inciting this negative sentiment.
It's like saying a
them,
newspaper
right?
incites violence when they cover anything.
But would you agree with me in saying there's a significant difference between a newspaper that's a public outlet and something like TPUSA and something like this, where you have a bunch of like-minded people, right? So I don't know. My feeling is just that it creates this environment where speech is not equal.
I appreciate the sentiment. Yeah. You're being so respectful.
I appreciate you coming here, and it was nice talking to you.
You too, man. Thank you.
Give the young man some credit. He didn't lash out. He didn't get angry. He didn't throw some insult. Shook Charlie's hand at the end of it, which is how it should be. We don't have to all agree on everything. In a lot of instances in debates, there's not necessarily a right and wrong. There's some opinions. In this case, I think this young fellow's in the wrong because I do think that universities, as much as possible, should be apolitical. Like if you're teaching an engineering class or thermodynamics or something of the sorts, the students don't need to know your political affiliations at all. Leave that out of it. They should know the facts. They should know how to do calculus. They should know all the stuff that they need to know for, say, mechanical engineering or civil engineering, architecture. They don't need to know if you're a conservative or a liberal or a Democrat if you're a teacher. If you're a poli-sci guy, if you're teaching lesbian dance, obviously, maybe. But for most cases, most of the time, classes should be apolitical. And if you're going to have a political teacher or somebody who's going to put himself out there, I still think it's like going for a job interview. For a company, you would research the company, maybe not like Starbucks or something like that. Obviously, that's a very woke company. But if you worked at Home Depot as a teenager, you don't care. You just want a paycheck. But as an adult, if you're graduating university and you want a career, if you work at a law firm, say, you're going to want to know what that law firm stands for, who are the lawyers that own it. You're going to want to know all these things, and going to university is no different. You're paying a boatload of money to be there. You should have a right to know about your teachers, who's teaching it, what are their credentials, and if they've been published anywhere, you should Google them or go on Turning Point USA or whatever other websites are like that. You should get as much information in order to form your opinion on where you're going to go to school. I think ultimately it's a good thing, and I think these teachers can come out and they can debate Charlie or whoever else if they disagree with it, and we can have open conversation, and all of these things are good. Ultimately, these debates, I think some of these students, especially the very woke ones, they probably learn more from just sitting there with Charlie for 15, 20 minutes, having a critical thinking conversation, asking some proper question, which is how you get to answers, than they do in these universities, because they're taught an ideology. They're taught one way. We have this thing we want to push, and we're going to shove it down your throat. So, yeah, that was a good little conversation with that student. I enjoyed it. Hope you guys did too. Subscribe to the video. Click that thumbs up button. Leave a comment down below. As always, be respectful. Thanks to all of you who have subscribed lately, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Peace out, everybody.